I want to take a moment and address some concerns about Android 12L on the Surface Duo. So I've seen a comment that's gone around quite a bit since that update came out, and it is basically people wondering, is this actually even Android 12L on the Surface Duo? And I can, in some ways, understand why they would feel this way. If we go to our Duo here, and we go into our settings, and we look for that Android version, it does, of course, say Android 12. And I've seen many people say, well, hey, what happened to 12L? This just says Android 12. Well, let me first, before we really dig into this video, let me put your minds at ease. If I grab my Z Fold 4, which is definitely running 12L, actually now it's running 13 because it's on the One UI 5.0 beta. But if I, prior to that, pulled it up, it would have told you the same thing. The Z Fold 3 is on 12L. It would have told you the same thing. Android 12L is not like an official version of Android. It's more like Android 12.5. It was a code name to a mid-release update. Okay, so when you see Android 12 here, that doesn't mean that it's not 12L, because 12L is a subset of 12. It's only going to say 12. So yes, it is Android 12L. But, why are people wondering that in the first place? Other than just looking and seeing this as 12 and getting confused. Why might people be thinking that? Well, it's because the most visually eye-catching features of Android 12L aren't present on Surface Duo, right? The things that we were, maybe getting hyped up about seeing, things that we've seen on other devices like the Z Fold 4, which I continue to gesture to off screen as if you know where it is. It's over there. Those things are not on Surface Duo. Let's look here at this post from October 27th of 2021, Android developers. This is on their blog, and we'll look at some of these features here. So the two-column layout for the notification shade. Obviously, on Surface Duo, it's not what we have. We have a notification shade on one screen or on the other screen. We do not have any way or any option to do this. What you would essentially be seeing if you did do this, go away. I cannot make that go away. There it goes. Would be you would pull down the notification shade, and rather than getting the shade only showing up on one screen, you would get it showing up on both screens simultaneously, and you would see this on one side and the notifications on the other. A lot of people have said, why is that not on Surface? And I can understand why you would ask why that's not on Surface Duo. Personally, I don't think it makes a ton of sense on Duo, because we have to think about Duo in a really specific way. Duo is not a tablet. I know Android sees it as a tablet, so there were reasons to think these things would be coming. But Microsoft just disabled them. They're just not doing them. And it's because you should more conceptualize Duo as being two relatively normal-ish screens, two relatively normal phones stuck together. So I'd have to ask you this. Why would you want that motion to occlude both screens? Why would you want to lose both your screens just to see your notifications and your quick settings at the same time? Now, I will say that maybe you have a good reason for that. Maybe you would prefer that. And yes, it would have been cool for Microsoft to have included like a toggle to let us choose how we wanted this to look. But I hope you can understand why Microsoft did not include this. They could have, but they didn't, because they thought it just didn't really make sense on this device. We can go a step further here though, right? Because if we grab a Z Fold 4, and we pull down the notification shade, you don't get dual panel there either. Let's rotate it. You still don't get dual panel there. Why? Because Samsung didn't think it made sense on their device either. There's not enough space here. Technically, yes, there is. They could have easily done this. When you rotate it, they could have easily fit both columns. But they didn't, because they didn't think it made sense on their device. Microsoft is doing the same thing. Let's look down here at the taskbar, right? This is maybe the biggest one, and this is something that is present on 12L on other devices, like on the Z Fold 4. If we open up an application, you will see the taskbar down here, and you can grab an app and you can bring it up here and split screen that app there, and it works really well. Why is that not on Surface Duo? And I think it's a similar answer to the last question. How would that even work on Surface Duo would be my first question, right? You've got a device that is dual screen. So would you put the taskbar at the bottom? Would you basically make this bar down here be your taskbar essentially? And just have that be over the top of your apps? Now you're losing that much height. Maybe if you shrunk it a little bit, you could maybe make that work kind of. But I think there's a better, more important question that you have to ask about this, about how that would actually make sense. So on the Z Fold 4, when we open up an application, that's one big app. If we want to open up a second application prior to the taskbar, well, prior to the taskbar and prior to their version earlier of a taskbar, if we just kind of make it vanilla Android, the only way to do that would have been to have swiped up and held and then selected an icon up there and gone into split view and then picked the next app. It's kind of, honestly, it's kind of a crappy experience. It's just not that good. Now, if you want to open up a second app, you have your taskbar to open up that second app. How does that compare to the experience on Surface Duo? Well, on Surface Duo, if we want to open up an app, we open it up. And if you want to open up a second app, you have another screen. You have your whole launcher at your disposal. All of your apps are right there. They're not on a taskbar that you need to kind of remember where you put things on that bottom bar. They're just on your launcher. So you launch a second app by just launching a second app. I went to Little Caesars today. Now, you can't ever have more than 2 apps going on Surface Duo. So let's say you've got 2 apps open. You can't ever have a third one. So let's say you got Twitter and the Play Store and you want to get rid of the Play Store. Well, you know, I guess you could make an argument that that's where a taskbar would make sense, that maybe seeing some icons down here, you could drag one up. But you could also make a pretty strong argument that the action of dragging an app from the taskbar up to that screen is pretty similar to the act of going home and then launching whatever app you want from your launcher again, right? That's a pretty similar experience. So I think similarly to the dual panel thing on Surface Duo, how that would have, yeah, I guess it could work. How well would that work? Does it really make sense on the device? The taskbar is a similar thing. I guess technically you could do it, but is it really worth doing? Does it really make sense on a dual screen device to have a taskbar to launch a second app when you always have another screen to launch a second app? I also want you to keep in mind that a lot of the stuff about 12L is this stuff. It's APIs, it's guidelines for other applications to work better with dual screen and large screen devices. And we've already kind of seen this stuff taking effect. Prior to this update, if you went into Gmail and you spanned it across both screens and you went to reply to an email, it broke. It didn't work. After the 12L update, guess what? Those APIs being used are now, they're there. They're actually there on Surface Duo, and that does work better. I also want to point out, when we talk about dual panel stuff, it's here where it makes sense. And where it makes sense is with spanned apps, right? So let's do a really simple one. Let's just open up our settings app. Okay, that's just what it looks like on a regular phone, but now let's span it. And guess what? You got a dual panel layout that makes sense. So the APIs are there. The dual panel stuff, granted, look, I understand the settings thing could do this before. So this is more just an example of when dual panel 12L-ish stuff makes sense and when it doesn't. Keep in mind, Microsoft was kind of doing their own 12L-ish stuff prior to 12L. So just, again, take this as a broad example. What I'm getting at is that Microsoft is utilizing the dual panel stuff, the 12L-ish stuff, where they think it makes sense, and they're not utilizing it where they don't think it makes sense. Now, I can totally sympathize, though, with people that saw all these features, the things I've just mentioned, and there's probably more that I'm just not thinking about that weren't on their blog post, and they were wondering, where is that stuff, and they didn't get it, and now they're disappointed. I totally sympathize with that perspective. I just want to give you another perspective, right? This is 12L. Here's why, some valid, I think, reasons for why some of those features just aren't on Duo. And I want to remind you that I made a video already going over all of the new features on Android 12L on Duo now, which if you've not watched that, maybe give that a look. It might ease your mind a little bit because, again, despite what some people might think, this was a very, very substantial update, not just in some of the features that are there, the visual overhaul, but also, the firmware, behind the scenes, driver updates, and things like that. This was a massive, massive update. Obviously, it's the biggest update that Duo, I believe, has ever gotten. I think this was a bigger overall file size than Android 11. I guess I'd have to look into that to make sure that's true. It's at least on par with that, if not larger. I do believe it is larger because of a more substantial visual overhaul this time around for sure. At any rate, that's kind of what I wanted to say about Android 12L and Duo. Where are the features? Is it really 12L? Hopefully that answers those questions for those of you that I see posing that question out there in the world of the internet. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.